Most romantic relationships don't go the distance. And those that do don't always seem all that happy. What if we're not all bad at relationships? What if we're just bad at managing stress? Till stress do us part.
Good morning. Good to see you guys. If I haven't met you, my name is Adam, and I'm the campus pastor here at our Corona campus, and really excited to jumpstart this new series with you today. But I did just want to say before we do dive in that there's something really exciting happening this afternoon from 4 to 5 p.m. We're having an interest meeting for our Kenya trip. And so we have a campus in Kenya, and there's an orphanage that we sponsor there, and a lot of kids that a lot of you sponsor through Tumaini and our partnership there. And starting last year, we decided to make an annual trip to serve that community. And so if that's something you're kind of interested in or interested in just like knowing more about it, this afternoon is an interest meeting that is over Zoom from 4 to 5 p.m. And you can jump on the Church Center app and RSVP for it. So you can jump in, hear a little bit more about what it entails if that's something that you would like to do. It's an incredible trip, and I highly recommend it to everybody. Besides, you get to go on a safari while you're there. And so, man, what more is there? You get to do good work and see amazing zebras. Okay, so with that said, we're going to jump into this new series for the entire month of February. And I'm going to tell you, I think if you are here and tuning in every single week, you are going to learn some things that are going to revolutionize the way that you approach your relationships. And whether you are single or married, whether you are divorced, whether you're remarried, whether you are married for the 5th time, whatever situation you are in right now, I'm telling you, you're going to learn some things in this series that are going to help you move forward in a really healthy way. And today is going to feel like a bit of a fire hose. There's a lot in this introduction, and it's also going to leave you with a lot of questions of like, wow, there's so much more I want to know, and that's because this is week 1 of 4. And so hang on, keep coming back, write some notes, take down some things that are going to be helpful, because there's going to be a ton of things for you to think about, talk about, and try during this series. And the more you lean into the content that we're sharing outside of this service, the better things are going to be for you. And so I want to encourage you, take some notes today, write down some things, take pictures of the slides, whatever you need to do. And the title of my message is Overloaded. Overloaded. Now, my wife, Gretchen, and I have been married for a very long time now, over 2 decades. But I got to say, probably the most challenging, stressful season in our marriage was probably right after we first moved here. We had all 3 of our kids. Our youngest was like a month old when we moved here. All 3 of our kids were in diapers. This is a picture. Some of you are like, oh, it's because you didn't live through it. You did not live with these people. Like everything looks cute in a photo on a beach, okay? Because you don't know that 2 of those kids pooped themselves during this photo shoot. And we had to change it in the sand. It's getting everywhere. But this season of life was just challenging. I mean, we moved to a new state. We lived in Arizona beforehand. We had 3 kids. I was learning a new place, a new job, and my wife is trying to juggle these kids at home. And I remember I would come home from work, and basically as soon as I walked in the door, my wife would be there, frazzled, sweatpants and a sweatshirt and like stains on everything. And she would just look at me and just be like, "Where were you?" And I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, I'm actually 5 minutes early. I don't understand. I'm not even late right now. And she's upset. And she'd be like, "Where were you?" And I'm like, I was at work. It's not like I was out like messing around. You know what I mean? I was working at a church, like I wasn't. And she was like, "Well, the dishwasher's broken and this window won't open." And I'm like, I don't know what I should do about that right now. She's like, "I need you to carry these boxes upstairs. And the boys are in their room. I almost killed the middle one. Okay, he's lucky he's alive. You know what? Remind him of that, okay?" I'm like, he's 2. He's not gonna, she's like, "They're your problem now." And then she would just like go off into the bathroom and slam the door. And as she was going into the bathroom, she'd be like, "By the way, we got that thing that we got to leave for in a half hour, so make sure you get ready." And I would just be like, "What just happened?" I don't even know what just occurred. I don't know what thing she's talking about. Okay, like, why can't she say the name of the middle one? Okay, why did she call him the middle one? What happened when I was gone? And I could feel in that moment just standing there with my kids around me and this list of chores and unopened mail of just thinking, like, I could feel my blood pressure rising and my jaw tightening. And I wanted to be calm. I wanted to seem calm, but I was so mad, just angry, boiling over on the inside. And I would think, like, how dare she? I mean, like, I was planning on coming home and relaxing, okay? She is being very inconsiderate. Doesn't she understand how hard I work? I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. I've been home for like 30 seconds. She's already suckered me into a fight that we both know is going to bleed into the next 3 days. Because this isn't the first time. It has happened before. It'll happen again. And just feeling the frustration. Anybody else ever been in a situation like this before? A few of you, a lot of liars. That's fine. God knows. Some of you are like, yeah, it happened this morning. I don't want to raise my hand because I'll get in trouble. You get the elbow of sanctification. I don't need that. And when you're in a situation like this, it sucks. It's horrible because one person feels like they're being attacked and the other person feels like they're drowning, right? Both want reprieve and support. Nobody's getting it. And so you blame each other. And this sort of situation happens to everyone on occasion, right? Because life is complicated. It's difficult. Certain seasons are very challenging. But when this moves from an occasion to sort of your default setting where this is the way that it is every single day, you start dreading coming home. You start dreading them coming home. You start not even wanting to be in the same room together. Your whole relationship starts to feel like a fight waiting to happen. And if you have been in a season like that, you know the desperation that surrounds it. You start to wonder, like, how did we get here? All your interactions start to feel like some chaotic combination of criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt. Dr. John Gottman calls these the four horsemen because when they show up regularly, it's a death sentence to a romantic relationship. And I'm just going to unpack what these things are so we can all feel weird together. Criticism is attacking the person instead of trying to solve the problem, right? It's when you get into this mode where you're nitpicking every little thing they do. You're making jokes at their expense. You're unfairly labeling them with these blanket statements or pigeonholing them of like, this is who you are, I know. And it's just this constant grading. Then there's defensiveness, which is justifying your behavior by blame shifting or deflecting responsibility. So as soon as like the other person brings something up with you, you act as if they are stupid for bringing this up or for even feeling frustrated about what they're frustrated about. You start listing everything that they're doing wrong instead of owning to what you did wrong. You start escalating by attacking or mistreating them for even coming to you with this thing that they want to talk about. There's stonewalling, which is where you shut down and shut out your partner. You dodge certain subjects. You refuse to explain anything that you think that they should already know, which is most things. You act busy. You avoid physical touch. You recoil. You begin to be unwilling to listen to or compromise with them about anything anymore. There's contempt, which is assuming that all the conflict that the two of you have is due to their lack of character. You start seeing anything that happens that's hurtful between the two of you as obviously intentional, feeling disgusted by their very presence, refusing to give them credit for anything good because it's not even possible, and speaking about them with disdain. And the more the four horsemen hang around, the more you start to ask yourself, what happened? What happened to all our chemistry? Like, do we just grow apart? Were we ever really right for each other? I mean, is this just how it's going to be from now on? Is this what falling out of love feels like? Is this it? Like, are we over? Do we just cut our losses and move on? And when your friends notice that something's off with you and they're like, well, what's going on? What happened? You never know what to say because it's not one thing. It feels like it's just like the whole thing. Yes? See, the reality of it is when we can't pinpoint the problem in a relationship, we assume that the relationship must be the problem. And if that's true, the only solution is an exit. But the question that I want us to wrestle with during this series is, what if your partner isn't the problem? I guess the question that I want to ask is, why do so many relationships go from fairy tale to fail? Because they don't start out as this tragic tale, but so many end up there. And in fact, statistically, more and more relationships are steering there quicker. More relationships are falling apart faster. And so how do you stop it? And I want us to wrestle with this question through the lens of an Old Testament love story. In fact, we're going to track different parts of this story through the next 4 weeks together as we make different observations and wrestle with the New Testament words of what it means to be a Christ follower in love. And this story that we're going to look at is in the Old Testament, and it begins like I think a lot of fairy tale romances do, with a king that's in need of a queen. But to make it realistic, he's freshly divorced and depressed and drunk a lot. That's the way this story starts. I can't lie to you, it's all there in the scriptures. It's found in the book of Esther. And we're going to begin reading in the second chapter of Esther. It says this. So his personal attendants suggest, because he's depressed and his relationship fell apart, we got an idea. Let us search the empire to find the most beautiful young virgins. The one who most pleases the king will be made queen. This advice was very appealing to the king. And so he put the plan into effect. Some of you are like, of course it was. Yeah, of course he did. Some of you are like, this just sounds gross and archaic to me, okay? And that's fair. But you know what it sounds like to me? The Bachelor. That's what it sounds like to me. So you're like, oh, can you believe how they did things back then? And it's like, how they did things back then, they're still doing it. So this king hosted the first season of The Bachelor for himself. And it says in verse 16 that Esther was taken to King Xerxes at the palace. And the king loved her more than any of the other women. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen. Sounds like a dream come true. And just so you know, it takes more than just pretty to become queen, right? Because in this culture, pretty girls quickly get put in a harem. They don't get made queen. Putting a crown on Esther's head is this king's way of saying, like, listen, there's something about you. You fascinate me. You don't see things the way that I do, and you can do things that I can't do. Everything is better when you're around, including me, which is why I want to spend the rest of my life with you by my side. It sounds like a fairy tale. But a short time later, her cousin pleads with her to ask the king, her husband, to protect their people. And she says this, which is interesting. Chapter 4, verse 11. She says, all the king's officials and even the people in the provinces know that anyone who appears before the king without being invited is doomed to die. And the king has not called for me to come to him for 30 days. She's like, I know this is really important, but let me just be real with you for a minute. I can't talk to him. Not now, not about that, because we're not in a good place. It's not how it used to be. I feel like he's been avoiding me. And if I'm honest, I don't want to do something that might set him off, and this feels like that's what this would be. And I wonder if you notice the drastic shift between chapter 2 and chapter 4. It's pretty evident that something has changed between the two of them. What? And the reason I think this is a good question is because I think This is a lot of our stories, right? We get together, we fall madly in love, everything's perfect until one day we sort of look up and we think like, I can't bring this topic up with them. In fact, they haven't wanted to have much to do with me in the whole last month. And so how do you get there? How do you get from this fairy tale, we're in love, they see me, they get me, everything is moving forward, to I don't even think I could have a conversation with them about something that's important to me? How do you get there? Well, if you're this couple, in a very Shakespearean way, okay? Let me break this down for you. Esther's cousin, Mordecai, okay, he saves the king's life, right? And nobody knows that he is Esther's cousin, by the way, and he gets rewarded, which makes him one of the king's top advisors. One of the existing top advisors, Haman, gets really jealous of this. He hates Mordecai. Everything he does just like annoys him. He wants him gone. Then Haman finds out that Mordecai is a Jew, and so he cons the king into decreeing the eradication of all Jews, still not realizing, neither one of them, that the king's new wife is a Jew. And then things escalate really quickly. It says in Esther chapter 3, verse 14, the dispatches were sent by swift messengers into all the provinces in the empire, giving the order that all Jews, young and old, including women and children, must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated on a single day. Now, Esther, in our story, doesn't even know that any of this has happened until her cousin, the guy that the other guy hates so much that he's willing to kill all of the Jews in order just to get to this one Jew. That guy tells her that, what's going on, and tells her that she needs to ask her husband for help. But her husband, the king, has been so busy that they haven't even talked in the last 30 days. Also, you should know that the king has a bit of a temper. Okay? You should go back to chapter 1 and hear about what he did to his ex-wife, okay? So Esther's like, I don't want the first interaction that I have with him in over a month to be me accusing some of his favorite advisors of making him look like a fool. Oh, also, I never told him about our past before we got together. I'm a Jew, which means he accidentally just agreed to kill my whole family. None of which he's actually met in person before because it feels like he doesn't care. It feels like my crown is meaningless. I thought I was special, but now I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm just another girl. And if I speak up, it's not going to stop. It's just going to mean I die first. Now, I know this all seems a little Game of Thrones-ish, okay? We can acknowledge that. But also, it's just people. It's people who are really stressed out. And when we're stressed, we have a lot less time for each other, and we're way worse to each other, which I don't need to tell you, you've experienced this. This is not a great cocktail. In fact, when we are very, very stressed and our buttons are being pushed, we don't even act like ourselves. Stress throws us into survival mode, right? Which for us is usually one of three things: flight, fight, or freeze. One psychologist actually assigned them animal metaphors, which is how I'm going to describe them because that's just way more fun, okay? The deer, the cobra, and the possum. The deer represents the flight response, right? So it's like the moment you feel really uncomfortable, you are clocking the exits. Your body's restless. You want to get out of there. You want to get out of the conversation. You want to get out of the room. You want to get out of maybe even the relationship. You would rather do anything else than have to deal with this at this moment. Then there's the cobra, which is the fight response. And if you're the cobra, you don't run from threats. You lash out at them. An intense anger sweeps over you. You become tense and tight-jawed. You attack the source of your discomfort, no matter what it is. You argue, mock, belittle, intimidate, threaten. And then there's the possum, which represents the freeze response. And if this is sort of your default response, stress makes you feel stuck. It fills you with dread. Your body clams up and sort of shuts down on you. You're convinced that anything you say or do is just going to make everything worse at this point. And so you still yourself and you shrink back and you try and become invisible in the moment. And in our story, this Esther story, the king is a cobra, and Esther, her whole life has always been a deer. In other words, when his buttons are pushed, he lashes out and she runs away. And here's what is wild about this story, and what I think actually applies to a lot of our stories. Inside of this story, neither one of them has any clue what's going on with the other one. They have no idea the weight they're carrying or how heavy it feels. They're interacting with each other out of their stress, but they're not talking to each other about their stress. And I wonder if you've ever done that before. Most of us, I would argue, do not know everything our partner is carrying or how much stress they're under. And as a result of this, instead of banding together to fight our stress, we fight each other because of our stress. It's the worst. But we all do this, which is why so many New Testament authors tell us to do the opposite. The Apostle Paul wrote this, Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. He says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way fulfill the law of Christ. But here's the reality. It is hard to help someone carry a burden they have never told you about. It's really hard to help your partner deal with an aspect of stress they've never really sat down and made it clear to you just how stressful it actually is. It's difficult to help people with issues you're not even really aware that they're having. Elsewhere, this same author writes this, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15. Speak the truth in love, growing in every way more like Christ, who makes us all fit together perfectly. As each part does its work, we all become healthy. In other words, he's saying being honest about what's really going on with us makes room for God to give us the encouragement, resources, and help we need through the people that he's put around us. And when we pay attention to others, we feel the Holy Spirit stirring inside of us to do the same for them. But here's what I find fascinating, and you're going to recognize this as we move through this series. Scripture spends a lot of time telling us how to manage our stress, but not how to eliminate it. And here's the reason for that. Stress is unavoidable. It's impossible to live a life without any sort of stress. In fact, being in a relationship is signing up for a lifetime of stress with each other. In fact, this is how I'm going to encourage my sons to propose. Would you do me the honor of being stressed out with me forever? I know life is going to be crazy. I know that we're really going to go through it. And I want to make sure that when I am out of my mind, I want you there. And that's why I'm buying you this very expensive piece of jewelry. It's a request and also an apology ahead of time. Because life is full of stress, right? And most stress fits into two categories, right? There are major stressors and minor stressors. Okay, so major stressors are the ones we tend to think of. They're the big disruptions that often center around events in time, right? You've got a big deadline at work. You're like, man, my mom has cancer. Our kid just got suspended. The bill collectors are calling. Somebody just rear-ended our car. These are the big, major, momentary things that happen where we panic and something has to be done. And then there are what are called minor stressors, which are all the little things that require ongoing mental, physical, and emotional energy. It's stuff like household chores, paying bills, shuttling kids, sleep schedules, grocery shopping, the gophers that keep attacking your yard and ruining your landscaping. And here's what is interesting. We would think that the major stressors are what take our relationships down. All the research indicates that it's the minor stressors that do the most damage because they wear us down. And this is why when things go sideways for a couple, most couples have trouble pointing to one specific issue or an event because it was a million minor stressors making life more unmanageable for the two of them and their interactions with each other a whole lot more volatile. In fact, this category of minor stressors and what it means to actually manage these things, psychologists have nicknamed our mental load. Maybe you've heard this term before. It is the invisible, non-tangible tasks required to run day-to-day life. And it consists essentially of 4 things. Some of you are about to get a picture of what a mental load is and realize where the overflow of stress is coming from in your world. Essentially, mental load is a combination of remembering, researching, worrying, and delegating. Remembering is knowing what and when everything needs to get done. Researching is figuring out the best way to get that thing done. Worrying is understanding the consequences of not getting it done. And delegating is assigning tasks and following up to make sure it all gets done. Some of you are like, I feel stressed just hearing you say that out loud. And in fact, when you start to sort of run this through the grid of your life and all the different areas that have to be remembered and researched and worried about and delegated, it can stack on and get crazy real quick. But here's what is true. Relational success is the result of how well a couple shares the mental load and manages the minor stressors, which is alarming to me because so few of us give this much time or attention. Because in our minds, it has so little to do with why we aren't clicking romantically. But I've got to tell you, as easy as this thing is to ignore, if you won't willingly initiate this conversation, it'll come up on its own. Often at the most inconvenient time, in the most emotionally volatile way. And some of you are like, you don't need to tell me. It's happened. I've sat with so many couples where one person is like, I'm done. We've been married a long time, but I can't do it anymore. And here's what's wild about these interactions. Oftentimes the other person is surprised. And they're like, I thought things were going great between us. And the reason you thought that is because the other person was carrying it all. Because in your mind, on your end, things did feel good, but on their end, things were heavy. They were at a breaking point. They just got to the point where they couldn't hold on anymore. There's a piece of ancient poetry that is often shared at weddings. It's by King Solomon. It's found in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. Maybe you've heard this at a ceremony before. It says, 2 people are better off than one. For if they can help each other succeed, if one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. And you know what it is that summons the 4 horsemen? It's when someone in a relationship feels like, I'm not sure the 2 of us is better than me all by myself anymore. Because I already feel alone. And when I'm completely overwhelmed, I feel like I cannot reach out to you for help. And the fact that you don't notice, or maybe you notice, but you are not willing to change or help, it makes me want to leave. And the reason these conversations feel so heavy and desperate is because there is a reality to them that has to be worked out that maybe both people don't see. The truth is, lopsided partnerships don't last. And this doesn't mean that everything has to be equal, but it does have to feel fair to those involved. In other words, when you are in a relationship and you are managing the minor stressors of your life, the way in which those things are separated out and assigned and held on to, neither person can feel like they're being taken advantage of. Does that describe your relationship? That things may not be equal, but they are fair. That you and them believe that, like, this feels equitable. I know you can do more. I know you're better at these things. I'm better at these things, but like, I don't feel taken advantage of. I don't feel like I'm getting the short end of the stick. I don't feel like you don't care about what I'm carrying. Let me ask it in this really blunt way. Are you really partners or are you just married? Because there's a big difference. You'd be smart to find out. So here's your homework this week. To identify the mental load that each of you carry and how stressful each item is. And what you're going to find when you do this is that there are some things that they're fine doing, but they need you to know how heavy they are. They need you to see and understand that. There are going to be other things that like they just don't want to be doing anymore, but you wouldn't mind doing. And here's something, maybe no one's ever told you this. You're allowed to trade. You're allowed to adjust the mental load if one of you is more suited to deal with something than the other. That's what a partnership looks like. This is what it means to carry each other's burdens. And then there's going to be probably a third category as you guys are talking about it that are things that neither of you should be doing. And if that's the case, stop. I got to tell you, making time for this is a bigger deal than you think. I think there are so many couples like we find at the very beginning of this Old Testament book that look at their relationship and it is unrecognizable to them. They found each other, they fell in love, things were clicking, and then life happened and stress happened, and now they're just reacting to one another, and it just feels like, man, I don't know how long I can do this. A lot of it has nothing to do with love. It has everything to do with managing the stress load between the two of you. Making time to do this is a way bigger deal than you think because, like it or not, happy relationships are the result of healthy stress management. And that's what we're going to unpack during the rest of this series. There's a lot of tools that we're going to give you, a lot of things that we want to help you with, some practical things we're going to give you to apply. But if this is true, maybe it's time to reevaluate how you're managing your stress, what each of you are carrying. And the first step to that is simply a conversation to unpack what you're going through, what you're experiencing, to know the stress you need to fight together so that it doesn't convince you to fight each other. And this is what I want to pray into your life today. In fact, I'm going to invite my wife to come up and pray with me. And this is what I want to challenge you to do. Everybody's eyes open, everybody looking around. It's like the opposite of what we normally do. But here's what I want to challenge you to do. If you're here this morning and you are in a serious relationship, maybe you're married, maybe you are engaged, maybe you have committed your lives to one another, maybe you're serious about taking next steps together, maybe you've been married for a long time, maybe you're on the verge of divorce, I don't know. But if you're in a place where you're like, you know what, there's a lot of stress in our relationship right now, and some of it isn't even because of the two of us, but it's impacting the two of us. If that's you, would you just stand up as a couple? We want to pray over you today. I want to encourage you as you stand just to grab the hand of your partner. This could represent a million different things, but I tell you, most stress that we experience in our relationships, it comes from the outside and tries to peel us apart. But the first step is just acknowledging that. And here's what I want the rest of you to do that are sitting down. I want you just to reach a hand out towards these folks that are standing, and we're going to pray that God would give them the ability to see what each other are carrying and to help them be there for one another during this season, that this series would be the beginning of putting things back together in a way that makes sense and is sustainable for the both of them. Would you bow your heads across this space? God, I know you see every person here. I know you see every couple. I know you see those who stood. I know you see those who don't even have the strength at this moment to stand to their feet, who don't even have the ability, they feel like, to hold the other's hand because things have been tough and it's been that way for a while. God, you know the stress that we're carrying. You know the heaviness of what we're lugging around. You know the sadness in each of our hearts that this is not what we expected. This is not what we wanted. This is not what we hoped for. But this is where we're at. And God, I pray that you would bring your help, your comfort, your knowledge, your perspective to this relationship. God, I really believe that in many of these situations, the relationship is not the problem. It's the stress peeling us apart. It's the desperation that we feel. And it's feeling like we are unable to help each other. We're just treading water. God, I pray that your spirit, your love, your understanding, and your wisdom would give us the tools we need in this season to follow you to the other side. God, I pray that you would give hope. I pray that you would restore what has been lost and that you would resurrect these romances from this dead and dry and broken place, and that you would breathe new life. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.